Grab your scuba suits, people. We have a problem. What are you supposed to be?
Oh, I'm the sea lion.
The tweet heard round the world. Smoke bomb!
The day after jolly old Saint commercialization snuck down our chimneys, Yoshihide Suga, Japan's chief cabinet secretary, announced something shocking. But first, a little backstory. Whales have a lot of resources that people like, be it whale meat or oil, whatever the case. People like whales so much that the populations of some whales have dwindled low enough to consider them endangered. Japan joined an agreement to cease whaling in 1986 called the International Whaling Commission. Today, nearly 90 countries are on board in order to protect the whale species whose numbers have drifted into endangered territory. But some whales have had it rougher than others. The North Atlantic right whale was nearly brought to extinction due to whaling, leaving only about 500 left in the Atlantic Ocean today. Most researchers conclude that whaling was the cause of the issue in the first place, and that climate change is making it a lot worse. Some researchers are saying that if we don't act soon, these whales could be extinct by the 2050s. The day after Christmas, Mr. Suga made an announcement stating that Japan would be pulling out of the IWC in order to continue whaling. The reasoning behind the decision was so that Japan could conduct scientific research and reintroduce whale meat back onto the market. However, a New York Times article by Daniel Victor stated that there was a plummeting demand for whale meat in Japan, so what gives? The sad thing is, the International Whaling Commission doesn't prevent scientific research from being done on the whales, and if a whale is accidentally killed during research, its meat can be legally sold since the whale wasn't necessarily hunted, per se. Greenpeace is an organization that aims to bring people together to create a better world and reverse the harm to the environment that we've all caused. Therefore, it isn't hard to see why Greenpeace Japan has condemned the action of their government to abandon the IWC. Poaching is a problem for many species of whale, but this isn't anything new. For thousands of years, whales have been sacred and are comprised of an enormous amount of useful resources. The earliest known evidence for whaling dates back to nearly 6000 BCE on Bangude petroglyphs in Korea. A petroglyph is literally just an ancient rock carving. A few species that have been identified on the carvings are northern right whales, sperm whales, gray whales, and humpback whales. In the United States, whaling was at its peak around 1850. Nationwide, nearly 200 ships were being dedicated to the practice. Fast forward to modern times, and now some whale species have quotas on how many of their numbers are allowed to be hunted. These are in place for cultural or traditional purposes. For instance, the IWC from 2013 to 2018 allowed 336 bowhead whales to be hunted by certain Native Americans. The job of the IWC here is to ensure that the whale population will be able to recover after whaling, hence the quota. In the United States, whaling is not exclusive to Native Americans. A major export of New England during the late 1700s were whale-related products. Whaling represented most of America's gross domestic product for almost 100 years, which means most of the money made in America for nearly an entire century came from whaling. Authorities in Australia are less than thrilled with Japan's choice to resume whaling. Australia actually has a sanctuary dedicated to dolphins, whales, and porpoises that Japan has had issues with in the past. Even environmentalist groups are getting involved and giving Japan a hard time about their whaling problem. A group called Sea Shepherd actually used their own ships to interfere with the whaling ships, and did so for over 10 years, making it difficult for them to continue hunting. Battling the mistreatment of animals is a stressful road, But if you want to see how stressed the whales are, just ask to borrow some earwax. This is going to be gross, so you might want to mute this video for a second. Here's a video of Jack in the meantime. I'll be back on screen when it's safe to unmute. The earwax plug that is removed from a whale's ear can be over 1.5 feet long and weigh about 2 pounds. The reason why the earwax is so important is because it tells a story of the animal's life. The substance just continues to build up in their ears and layer on top of itself, since whales don't have easy access to Q-tips. We can tell how stressed the animal is or was based on how much of the hormone cortisol can be detected in the whale's earwax. Here's some yummy food for thought. If the whales being sampled are 73 years or older, we may be able to see the stress that World War II caused the animal. A combination of the constant plane engines, bombs being tested in the ocean, and massive ships always on patrol, war certainly does freak out the local wildlife. Japan isn't going to give up whaling without a fight. They claim it's a part of their culture, but many believe that's just a front for a more modern reason: financial gain. Japan is also trying to convince the Commission that many of the species we have marked as endangered aren't actually endangered at all. But that's a widely discredited opinion. New Zealand's former whaling commissioner, Sir Geoffrey Palmer, has some more bad news for us. He believes Japan may set up organizations in other countries who support whaling in order to gain better traction to freely kill the world's largest mammal. Donald Trump hasn't been as interested in tackling climate change as he should be. International law professor Alexander Gillespie believes that this will give other countries an excuse to ignore climate change for longer as well. Correcting the damage we have done to the environment will be an astronomical investment, so it isn't hard to see why so many countries wouldn't mind holding off on the expenses a little longer. The trash that we leave and throw into the ocean can entangle whales, and our leftover fishing equipment can trap them. In 2017 alone, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration marked down that 76 whales were caught in our trash, which included 6 whale fatalities. What makes it more depressing is that NOAA was only able to free less than half of the whales. This video was kind of a bummer, but rescuing animals resonates deeply with me, my family, and my friends. Hopefully next week we can go back to having a whale of a good time. Oh, and if you haven't heard about the upcoming lunar event, make sure to keep your eyes peeled. What will be going on is known as a super blood wolf moon eclipse, which sounds awesome.
I am the one who knocks.
CNN's website says it will be visible in the United States on January 19th, so you don't want to miss it. My name is Antag. Thank you so much for watching. Know that the most powerful tool for learning is interest. Let me know what you're interested in. Maybe I'll make a video.